world economy is broken, people are dying, and that's not because of your dogmatist and traditionalist political leaders. That's because of lazy economists. Hi guys, in today's video I'm going to discuss about how world economy is totally broken, rigged against common people. And I'm going to discuss not only the flaws but also a possible solution to all this. So if you want to understand how economy works, this is a good channel. You might want to consider subscribing. So I recently was able to see a debate between Jordan B. Peterson and Slavoj Žižek. These two people are incredible philosophers. Jordan B. Peterson gave perspective of capitalism, and he believes that capitalism not just only works but it's also good. And Slavoj Žižek gave an example how communism has the capacity to create an egalitarian society, and it's not the fact that communism does not work. He gave an example of China, who seems to be quite literally taking over the world as we speak. So I'm going to talk about this debate, which had a title of Capitalism, Communism, Happiness. Are we really that naive that we think that capitalism, communism has a capacity to be happy? Do you think economy has the capacity of you making happy? Let's talk about that. So it's a known fact almost amongst every therapist, every psychologist and psychotherapist, that money does not give you happiness. Now the reason is because with money comes incredible responsibilities, and those responsibilities sometimes are exhausting if you don't know how to handle yourself in deep waters. Now with communism, this experiment has been conducted for ages, and all it produces is a totalitarian government which has no idea of how to really make people productive. And at the end of the day, it just kills a lot of people. Now, that said, I don't think there is an happiness to be had in economic well-being. Now, there is, of course, an argument that yes, to be happy, you need to be productive. You need to have some money. So, you can make something in this world which is valuable to yourself and society. So that's sort of the capitalistic perspective. But economic well-being, while has an implication of happiness, so for you to be happy, you have to be economically well. It doesn't mean that if you have too much money, you're going to be happy automatically. You can loathe yourself into pleasure, in hedonistic pleasure. But that's all you're going to have. Hedonistic pleasure might seem like a good thing to have, but to be honest, it makes person hollow from inside. And this is something I have experienced numerous of times. I consider myself okay with money, and if I drown myself too much in hedonistic pleasure, I do find myself becoming hollow every now and then. That said, I would like to explain few things. Jordan B. Peterson gave how communism, the Communist Manifesto, which was a call to revolution, was not actually a call to revolution, but the author was trying to play identity politics, and how it's bad. Identity politics is just bad. That's what we are seeing right now. So let's discuss about the fall of Soviet Union, how communism fell and why capitalism continued. I think capitalism continued because it has the capacity of making people productive. It had the capacity of bringing people together in order for them to be motivated to achieve something which is in front of them. Communism, on the other hand, created enemies within ourselves, enemies within our family, and enemies within the economy. Solzhenitsyn, who was a very great philosopher and an author who later in his life won an award of Nobel Prize in literature, he was actually in the camps of Soviet Union. So he was in the concentration camp of Soviet Union. I have talked about of Solzhenitsyn in my previous videos, so if you want to check that out, that would be great. So we all know the evil of capitalism, but what is little discussed is evil of, let's say, in the most good way, capitalism. Capitalism has some evils. I saw a recent interview of a very important person, and that person was the best trader in the world. And I'm going to give you his name. Unfortunately, I forgot. The trader's name is Gary Stevenson. And Gary Stevenson is a person who talks about how the trading floor of his company was. He belonged to one of the biggest banks, Citibank, and he was the best trader in the world for 2017 or 18, I believe. I really don't remember. So it explains how exploitive his work environment was. So he explains it very precisely on how the person sitting beside him was high on cocaine, and nobody really cared because he was delivering. One problem he saw escalated to HR was when a person when a person stole a trade from another trader, from another comrade per se. And even then there was an understanding that shouldn't have been taken to HR, that should have been handled amongst themselves. Now, this is a very important perspective, right? Because traders are the people who actually make money for big banks, and they sort of bet against the world. So, for example, Gary Stevenson explains how when hurricane hit in Japan, and he put in trade, he saw that economy is going to collapse, and he put in a trade. And then he sat with his friend and he talked about how that should we do something about it? So he talked to his friend. He said to his friend, actually. And his friend, well, we did. We put in the trade. And he said, no. Should we do something about it? And his friend said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. We put in the trade. What else we are supposed to do? Now, nobody really understood what he meant. And he sort of goes on to explain how people and banks and hedge funds actively bet against people. They actively bet against people in order to make profit. And I don't see any problem with that. It's just that it's just too much exploitive and nobody's trying to fix it. Whose responsibility is to fix the world? Is it of politicians? They don't seem to be doing that. Is it the responsibility of intellectuals? But they are in self-loathing. They are thinking that they are so superior because they judge perspectives on facts and logics. Is it the probability? Is it the responsibility of economists? So Gary Stevenson sort of goes on to explain how top 10 economists in the world are traders and hedge fund managers. And these people are responsible for making money for big banks. I'm not talking about richers. I'm not dividing people in rich and poor. I'm just saying top 10 economists are traders and hedge fund managers. So they find ways to exploit the economy. They don't fix it. There are multiple broken things in an economy, and they don't try to fix it. Most economic research as of right now is on how to measure perspectives, how to predict things. It's not on let's develop a better economic model. That's not what being researched. The current economy is about behavioral science, how to exploit people, or either how to make people have better things. And a very good example of that we see in the current evolution of marketing and product development. So as of right now, the most common product everyone uses is social media. So social media actually optimizes for short-term pleasure, which is hedonistic pleasure, by the way. This is something Jordan Peterson talks about. So social media actually optimizes for hedonistic pleasure. And this is something marketing also does. Marketing also tries to give you that short-term happiness in order to convert into a paying customer. So that is something called predatory marketing. And there is a very good understanding amongst capitalism is that in order for you to survive in this day and age, in this economy, you have to be little predatory in order to make profit. And I'm not saying that, oh, I reject the perspective. There are people, of course, who's going to say that I reject the perspective that capitalism has to be predatory in order to make profit. Well, look at the data. Don't you think hedge funds are predatory? Well, they are predatory, I'll tell you that much. Do you think the trading firms are not predatory? They are predatory. They make profit out of people misery. And I'm not talking about like shorting company stocks. No, I'm talking about shorting countries, destroying world's economy, and actually actively betting against people who are in hurricane. Well, is it fine to take your money? If you're in loss and you're bleeding to death, and I just say, well, I'm sorry, it's just that I'm going to take your wallet. Is that not predatory? I think it is. So hedge funds are predatory. A very good example of it is actually 2008's housing crisis. So that was a very good movie which explained how housing crisis happened and how things worked at that time. It explains how rating agencies, banks, and investors, all of them were controlled by big banks. So banks will put on bonds, right? So they had home loans, and on home loans they would put bonds. And if the home loan is in a good condition, it's going to rate it AAA. If it's in a bad condition, it's going to rate it BB. So, but the rating agencies, they figured out a way to rate every home loan to be rated at AAA. So, houses below FICO score of 600 were valued at AAA, which seems to be very stupid, right? But that happened. And when discussed in the film that why does that happen, is just that bank does it. Bank created the chain where they can exploit people, they can exploit investors. That happens. And hedge fund was one of those things. Even the protagonist in the film, they bet against American economy and they won because no one was looking. That said, what happened exactly? So did big banks because this is illegal, right? Because you are misleading investors, you're misleading government. What happened? What exactly happened? Surely people got prosecuted. Surely people were put in jail. They suffered. No, nothing happened. Nothing like that happened. And I think the same problem is with pharmacy. I think the same problem is with world economy. I think the same problem is in India also. Well, what is in India? Well, in India, we have a startup culture. We have industrialists. And I think industrialists are exploiting Indian economy, and nobody seems to care. So I think capitalism is not all good. Capitalism is not perfect, I agree. But I think that there are better ways of economy. There has to be better economic systems to talk about, to discuss about, to implement. I'm not talking about communism. I'm not talking about capitalism. I'm just thinking there should be a better solution. There has to be. There has to be a way for me to survive without being predatory. There has to be a way in order for me to become the richest man in the world or to become the best person in the world in a particular trade without being a predator. And this is something I'm going to discuss. I think why is this the case? Why can't we discuss better economic models? Why cannot we do economic experiments? I think there is just no environment in which you can do that. Now, if I ask you, what is your idea of conducting creating an economic system and experimenting with it? What is that? What is the testing environment looks like? Is it in a lab? Is it in house? Is it in a society? Is it in a city? Or is it in a country? Well, the thing is, if you test an economic system and it fails, millions of people die. We just don't have a way. We just don't really have a way to test economic models. Now, that said, now let's come back to this perspective. And that's the reason the economic revolutions are led by idealists, not economists. Economists should be the one who's doing economic revolutions, not the philosopher and ideologists. They don't know shit about how people work. They don't know shit about how humans' behavior work. So I think people are being stupid. We should really think about, okay, fine, capitalism is working. Now we are approaching almost an egalitarian society. Is there a better way to implement economy? Is there a better economic model than capitalism? And we have stopped thinking that. And why we have stopped thinking that? Because all of the economists are hedge fund managers and traders, and it's their responsibilities to exploit economy, to exploit middle class people. And it's not like it's not hard. It's very hard. It's very, very hard. And if you don't think big banks exploit hedge fund managers, you're stupid. Just go, and I'll link this video somewhere in here or in description, how Gary Stevenson explains his predatory and exploitive work environment. And that is the case. Hedge fund management is very bad. It's very strange. And people volunteer to be exploited in some sense. And that is the reason we can have a better economy. We can have a better economy where we don't exploit people. And we create good profit, and we can make everyone happy, not just riches. Now, a very good problem, I think a good estimation of problem is that why is this happening? Well, the capitalist center of the world, in America, there is a theory that there is a public sector and there is a private sector, and in every country, public sector and private sector keeps itself each other in check. But right now, what is happening in America is that private sector has grown in power, which is above the state, which is above the public sector. And that's the reason we are seeing such exploitative tactics being applied. So I think there has to be a limit. There has to be a limit to stopping predatory marketing and stopping predatory product creations. And this is the reason I've started AmTop, right? AmTop is my company where we do AI, we create AI reports. We use AI to do marketing. And one of the reasons I think is that if we study the data, if we create the right product, we don't have to be predatory. This is my axiomatic assumption. So if you want to check that out, please, there will be a link in description. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, guys. I really love you. And please consider liking and subscribing.